Hi, this is early music, no, not early music, modern music appreciation review for exam 3, and this is video number 4. It might be the last video. I think I can get through everything. So we left off talking about Brahms and Mahler. Remember, Mahler was the composer that was nostalgic for the greatness of the Romantic era, but Brahms was actually looking back to the Viennese classical era. And Brahms' lifelong model was what really famous composer that we talked about last unit? Beethoven, you've got it. Well done. Okay, Brahms composed in many genres, but in which genre did he not write? He never wrote any program symphonies. Program symphonies were really a genre of the Romantic era, so this makes perfect sense. It's very logical that instead he wrote just regular symphonies. He didn't write program symphonies. So he wrote multi-movement works, more in the classical style. Oh my gosh, that brings us to the next one. With regard to form, Brahms' Violin Concerto in D is more blank than romantic. The answer to that is classical, more classical than romantic. Again, classical was the era that came before the Romantic era. Beyond being a composer, what other musical activities did Gustav Mahler partake in? Mahler did all kinds of things music-related. He was a fantastic and very well-known conductor. In fact, he traveled around with orchestras for most of the time and did all of his composing pretty much in the summers. And it's one of the reasons why we don't have that many examples of his writing. He didn't write that much. He was busy doing other things. He also was involved with music administration. Remember, he ran some of those orchestras, not just as conductor, but he did the administration for them. So one thing that he did not do, that a lot of other composers did do, but he did not do, was he wasn't a concert pianist. He wasn't a famous piano player. He was basically a conductor and a composer, and also did some music administration. Gustav Mahler wrote in most romantic genres except, so now we're talking about Mahler. Remember the guy that was nostalgic and really trying to keep late Romanticism going as long as he possibly could. One thing that Mahler never wrote, though, was an opera. Mahler did not write opera. So that's the answer to that question. The chief composers associated with the early phase of modernism, by the way, those were Debussy, Stravinsky, and Schoenberg, were at the forefront of modernism in music, which is called the avant-garde. You've got it, avant-garde. So those composers, Debussy, Stravinsky, and Schoenberg, were at the forefront of modernism, and specifically the phase that they were involved with at that beginning stage of modernism was just known as avant-garde. Which musical elements were questioned in the modernist movement? Tonality was the huge one that was questioned. The idea of tonality, that it was being pushed to the limit in this era. But also melody and harmony were being pushed. Which artistic movement took its inspiration from Wagner's Leitmotifs? Now, first of all, remember what a leitmotif is. It's a musical representation of an extra musical idea, something outside of music. It could be an object, it could be a person, it could be a mood. Well, that whole idea basically morphed into symbolism, and that was a very important artistic movement of modernism, of the turning of the centuries. What is a way in which Stravinsky departed from the Romantic style? We didn't talk about this in class, so be ready here. Write this down. Stravinsky used mechanistic rhythms as opposed to rubato. In other words, he didn't push and pull the tempo like the Romantics had done. Remember we talked about rubato and what that means back in the last unit? It's the pushing and pulling of tempo. He didn't do that. Stravinsky was all about these motoric, mechanistic rhythms that just locked in, something that we're used to today in popular music. Modernist composers before World War I changed their approach to which elements of music? We did talk about this last class, and those are tonality, melody, and harmony. The holy trinity of music, as it was called at the time. Tonality, melody, and harmony. Now that changed after World War II, when the elements of music that get toyed with are primarily tone color and rhythm. The scale in which, now we're doing some terms. So the scale in which the octave is divided into 6 equal intervals is called the whole tone scale. So basically, if you start on a pitch and you just skip a whole tone over and over again, eventually you'll get 6 pitches, and that that makes up the whole tone scale. Now, if we have 8 pitches, we're used to having 8 pitches, right? Well, 7 pitches, and we repeat the 8th. But if you have 8 pitches that are fit into an octave by alternating whole steps and half steps, what you get is an octatonic scale. Just think 8 equals oct. Octopus has 8 tentacles. Octatonic scale has 8 pitches. But the important thing to also remember is that it gets its 8 pitches from alternating between whole and half steps. So it's whole, half, etc., or half, whole, half, whole. So there are 2 octatonic scales, and that's it. They can start on different pitches, so that kind of makes them different. They can be centered on different pitches, but that quality, those intervallic relationships, of those, there are only 2 that are possible. The scale that uses the entire chromatic scale as well as the pitches that come halfway between each pair, that's known as the quarter tone scale. So that's splitting even our half steps into quarter steps. And that can't be done on every kind of instrument. That can't be done on a keyboard. We don't have that unless we actually tune the keys to a different pitch, or the strings inside the piano to a different pitch, and assign that new pitch to them. You can't really do it. So it's pretty funky, and we listen to some of that in class. Let's keep going. Which composer originated serialism? Arnold Schoenberg is the name that you need to remember for that. Serialism equals Schoenberg. Schoenberg's reference to the emancipation of dissonance meant emancipation or freedom from the need to resolve consonant chords. So now we could have, or resolve dissonant chords, resolve dissonant chords. So we could have these dissonant chords, and now we just leave them, let them be on their own. We didn't have to resolve them. We didn't have to come back home. We didn't have to have a sense of peace that we had to have in the Romantic era. Atonal music is music in which no blank can be found. That's the answer to that, is where no tonic or tonal center can be found. Again, atonal is like against tonal music, is music in which no tonal center can be found. What happened to harmony in the early 20th century? Harmony started to get way out there. It started to get dissonant. It started to not feel, well, we already talked about the emancipation of dissonance right there. Harmony was more dissonant, more clashing against our senses, and we got used to it to a point, but still, it definitely does not sound like music from the Romantic era, or especially from the Classical era, or even the Baroque for that matter. The 5-note scale playable on the black keys of the piano. If you just play the black keys, you're only going to get 5 pitches, and that's known as the pentatonic scale. Sure, that can be changed to white keys as well, but the idea is that there are only 5 of them, and it has a particular sound. It's actually typical in a lot of Asian music and other types of music as well. Now we have a little bit of listening, and then some short answer. And I'm not going to go over the short answer anyhow, so we'll quickly go over the listening. Who composed Pictures at an Exhibition? Oh, there's more. Who composed La Fatale Pietra? You know what? I'm going to do this in another video. I can't do it in a minute and 30 seconds. So basically, the last video, video 5, will be on the listening questions. So, oh wait, I left out one question. Around 1900, what was considered by some conservative composers to be the holy trinity of music? I already answered it earlier. Melody, harmony, tonality. All right, that does it. We've covered all of those basic questions and listening in video number 5 to come very soon.